They didn't have internet. No sci-fi movies, no outside influence. They were just kids in a remote school in Zimbabwe. But that day, what they witnessed defied everything science dares to explain. 62 children, one event, a sighting no one could deny. They saw a UFO, but the most terrifying part wasn't the craft, it was the beings that stepped out of it. Aliens with black eyes, pale skin, and a silent message that still echoes today. This story was buried, mocked, hidden. You didn't hear about it on the news, you didn't learn it in school, and that's not a coincidence, because what these children revealed was never meant to be told. But what if it's all true? Get ready, because what you're about to discover might change the way you look at the sky forever. The Ariel School seemed, at first glance, like any ordinary place. Located in the rural area of Ruwa, Zimbabwe, it was surrounded by vegetation and silence, almost cut off from the rest of the world. There, children of expatriates and local families coexisted in a peaceful environment, far from any urban buzz. But it's curious how the perfect setting for the ordinary can suddenly become the stage for the unimaginable. On a distant September day in 1994, something crossed the African sky and changed everything. What many people don't know is that southern Africa has always been fertile ground for UFO sightings. Ancient tribes spoke of mysterious lights in the desert skies and strange figures wandering the land, but those stories were always buried or dismissed. The Ariel School, however, forced the world to pay attention, and it wasn't an adult soldier or ufologist who raised the alarm, it was children. Children who claimed to have seen something they were never meant to see. Ironically, while adults debate the existence of aliens in forums and labs, a group of 62 children would become the protagonists of one of the most consistent and mysterious UFO accounts in history. A remote place, untouched by media or modern tech, became the epicenter of something no government or scientist could control. And it all started so simply. A snack break, a normal recess, and then the sky began to move in a very abnormal way. It was late morning, and the children were outside on the dry school lawn. Some were playing, others chatting in small groups, just like any other day. But suddenly something shattered that calm routine. In the clear Zimbabwean sky, a metallic object appeared, hovering with unnatural silence, a UFO. And it wasn't just a strange shimmer, it was solid, real, and impossible to ignore. Little eyes began to lock onto that bizarre presence. According to reports, the craft floated low, near some trees just past the school's fence. Many kids ran over to get a better look. It wasn't a balloon, it wasn't a plane, it was something that defied everything they'd learned in science class. A group of children, ages 6 to 12, pointed, screamed, described. And what they saw simply didn't match anything from this world. But the most disturbing part hadn't even happened yet. Because it wasn't just the UFO floating silently, figures began to emerge. Small beings with large black eyes and strange fluid movements appeared near the craft. Aliens, not in a story, not in fiction, but right there, in front of them. And while some children simply watched, others claimed the beings communicated with them, not with words, with thoughts, a direct connection. And that detail would change everything. What those kids described wasn't confused or made up. They spoke with a clarity that left even psychologists stunned. The beings that stepped out of the craft were about 3 to 5 feet tall. Their heads were oversized, with black oval eyes that seemed to look straight into your soul. No visible mouths moved, and yet messages were somehow being transmitted directly into their minds. Aliens, they said, with the certainty of someone who saw it, not someone imagining it. The beings wore tight, black suits, almost like a second skin. Their movements, many kids said, were in slow motion, smooth, silent, as if they didn't even fully touch the ground. One being, in particular, stood still, staring at some of the children, as if studying them. You can't fake that. You can't make up 62 kids independently giving the same account. That's when the red flags started going up, even for skeptics. And the craft, a silver disc-shaped object, either landed or hovering low near the trees. It looked metallic, but had no visible seams or bolts. There was no sound, no wind, just presence. Some children said they saw lights or windows along its edge. Others said the craft flashed a strange light before disappearing. But all of them agreed on one thing: this wasn't from Earth. And that conviction is what pushed this story into the global spotlight. As soon as the beings disappeared, the schoolyard erupted into chaos. Some kids began crying hysterically. Others ran inside screaming for help. There was panic, but also confusion. It was like they'd seen something the brain just couldn't process, a short circuit between reality and the impossible. And how do you explain seeing aliens during recess? It was surreal, even for the ones who lived it. The principal, teachers, and staff noticed immediately that something was wrong. Calm, well-behaved kids were visibly shaken. When asked, they all started talking at once, describing the same details. The UFO, the large eyes, the mental message. This wasn't just group hysteria, it was something deeper, structured, eerily consistent. Some children, without fully understanding it, said they felt that something serious was happening to the planet. What's even stranger is how the reactions split. Some kids were in shock for days, others couldn't stop drawing what they had seen, and the drawings were almost identical, even when they hadn't seen each other's work. Over and over again, the disc, the small beings, the giant eyes. And that's when adults began to realize this wasn't going away on its own. At first, the teachers thought it was just a prank or overblown game. But once they started listening to the children, they realized something unusual had occurred. The stories were rich in detail, and more disturbingly, consistent. The principal called the parents, and that's when the mystery deepened. Because when the parents arrived, they didn't find chaos or misbehavior. They found terrified children talking about a UFO and aliens with chilling conviction. Some parents were skeptical. After all, who would believe kids claiming they met beings from another world? But others were visibly shaken, especially those whose children cried for days or suffered nightmares. Some tried to explain it religiously. Others called the local radio. And one teacher, in private, even admitted to seeing strange lights in the sky that same week. The story was no longer just a kid's tale, it was bothering the grown-ups. As the buzz spread, school authorities tried to stay calm and avoid media attention. But it was too late. The story was spreading like wildfire. And what scared the educators the most wasn't what the children said, it was how they said it, with certainty. No hesitation. And when you realize 62 children are describing the same alien, the same ship, and even the same telepathic message, the scientific community starts paying attention. At this point, the case left the school grounds and caught global attention. One of the first to investigate in person was John Mack, a Harvard psychiatrist and Pulitzer Prize winner. And no, he wasn't a UFO chaser. He was a respected academic, known for his skepticism and rigorous research. Even so, he flew to Rowo, Zimbabwe, after reading the early reports. And after speaking with the children, something inside him shifted. Because what he found didn't fit any known psychological explanation. Mack interviewed dozens of children, one by one. Without sharing their stories with each other, they repeated the same details: the shape of the craft, the alien's eyes, the way the message was transmitted. He noticed they weren't seeking attention, they were trying to understand. Many cried as they recalled it. Some closed their eyes like they were reliving it. And Mack was clear in his conclusion: this was real to them. And perhaps it really happened. Other journalists, ufologists, and documentarians rushed to Ariel. The school became a hotspot for filming, interviews, and field research. Mack's interviews were documented and are still circulated today as some of the most compelling UFO contact footage ever recorded. But as more attention came to the case, more efforts surfaced to discredit it. Why? Because it's easier to explain away a delusion than to accept that aliens may have chosen children to deliver a message. And that message would unravel something far bigger. What's most astonishing about this case is how it endured through time. These weren't just emotional, short-lived accounts. Years later, many of those kids, now adults, came forward and told the same story. Same words, same descriptions, same black eyes, same silent UFO hovering near the bushes. It's extremely rare to find a narrative so intact after decades, especially when it involves such an extraordinary phenomenon. Some of them appeared in recent documentaries, crying, shaking, saying they never forgot that day. They didn't profit from it. They didn't seek fame. Most even avoided the subject for years out of fear of being mocked. But the memory of the aliens, that eerie feeling of being watched, and above all, that mental message, never left. And here's the thing, you might doubt what they saw, but you can't doubt the pain they still carry. And it's not just one or two people. Dozens of them, now scattered around the world, retell the same event, with the same haunted look in their eyes. That's not coincidence. That's not acting, that's consistency. And when a pattern holds for over 20 years, it forces us to ask, why was this story buried? What about this encounter between children and otherworldly beings is so deeply unsettling? As the report spread internationally, psychologists and neuroscientists were brought in to explain the phenomenon. The most popular theory among skeptics: mass hysteria. But there was a problem: that explanation didn't hold up against the children's calm, clear, and detailed testimonies. There was no wild panic, no obvious fantasy. What investigators found were healthy children describing something unhealthy for our understanding of reality, and doing so with disturbing precision. John Mack, as an experienced psychiatrist, evaluated the kids and made it clear this was neither hallucination nor childhood fantasy. None of the tests indicated signs of psychological disturbance or influence from prior stories. And he went further. He suggested that the alien contact may have been intentional, with a clear purpose to deliver a message about humanity's future. A warning, something related to the environment, technology, and moral decay. And it wasn't verbal, it was telepathic. Science still struggles to grasp that concept today. The scientific community was split. Some open-minded researchers admitted the case deserved serious study. Others laughed, ignored it, or tried to bury it. Because accepting that a group of rural African children really had contact with UFOs and aliens threatens not only scientific dogma, but institutional ego. And this is where science often meets its own limits. When the data becomes too uncomfortable, it's easier to throw it away. But the Ariel School mystery, it kept growing. As the case gained more attention, strange things began happening behind the scenes. People near the school reported unmarked cars and men in suits asking aggressive questions and encouraging silence. Some parents claimed they were advised not to feed the rumor. And slowly a shadow narrative began to emerge, that someone somewhere didn't want the world to know what those children saw. Because if it really was just imagination, why all the effort to shut it down? Some theorists suggest the Ariel School was monitored by foreign intelligence agencies, perhaps even connected to US or UK interests. Others claim a full-on cover-up operation took place, similar to what happened in Roswell. The truth is, footage went missing, original notes were lost, and attempts to bring the case to mainstream media hit invisible walls. And every time the words aliens, UFO, and planetary message come up, those walls get even taller. It's as if the real threat wasn't the contact itself, but who received it. Children. Not scientists, not military men, not astronauts. Children. That makes it harder to deny, harder to mock. Because how do you discredit 62 kids giving the same description of an alien over and over for decades? Maybe that's the true danger. And when a truth is too uncomfortable, it gets hidden. But hidden doesn't mean gone. Because the consequences of that day are still unfolding. Decades later, the Ariel School case still lives inside the minds of those who were there. Many of the former students, now adults, carry the weight of something no one ever taught them how to process. Some became withdrawn, others turned to spirituality or science in search of meaning. But they all share one thing: a vivid memory of a day that shattered everything they thought they knew. Seeing a UFO just meters away, it marks you forever. And the most curious part, none of them backed down. Not one retracted their story. Even under pressure, criticism, or mockery, they stood by it. They all still say they saw aliens, and that the encounter had a purpose. Many say they became more environmentally conscious afterward. One man even said, "I never looked at the sky the same way again." Because to them, the sky isn't just the sky anymore. It's a doorway, and something once came through it. This kind of deep, lasting psychological impact, maintained for decades, with clarity and emotion, doesn't match any known pattern of hallucination or fantasy. We're talking about a collective mystery wound, invisible but still burning. And the more people try to forget it, the more it stings. Which brings us to a hard truth. Maybe this event hasn't been explained, because it can't be explained. At least not by what we currently accept as real. The big question is, why is one of the most well-documented, consistent cases of UFO and alien contact still ignored by the world? The answer is complex. Stories that can't be disproven, but also can't be comfortably explained, are pushed into the shadows. Mainstream media looks away. Scientific institutions remain silent. And the public, overwhelmed by noise and distractions, simply forgets. It's a collective choice to look away. But there's something deeper. Fear. Fear of admitting we might not be alone. Fear of accepting that children, not governments, were the messengers of a cosmic warning. Fear that aliens really are watching, and that their visit to Ariel School wasn't random, it was intentional. If that's true, then everything we know about life, history, purpose, collapses. So it's easier to laugh, label it as mass delusion, and move on. But the silence around this case doesn't make it less important. It makes it even more disturbing. Because as long as there's no official explanation, it remains a wound in our understanding of reality. And maybe, just maybe, it's not ignored because it's too strange, but because it's too true. And if that's the case, what else are they keeping from us? So tell me, if 62 children, in broad daylight, saw what no one else wanted to believe, what else could be happening out there? Away from cameras, away from radars, outside our understanding. Are we really ready to admit that aliens are among us? That UFOs aren't just lights in the sky, but beings with a mission? And more importantly, are we ready to hear what they came to say, before it's too late? The truth is knocking, and it might have big black eyes, and a message humanity still refuses to hear. Now I want to hear from you. Do you believe it was real, or is it still easier to doubt 62 kids than to face the unknown? If this video shook your beliefs, leave a like, share it with a skeptic, and drop a comment telling me what you think really happened at Ariel School. And of course, subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell, because in the next video, the truth gets even harder to ignore.